But we have a little camera. Not a camera, a little box.
Do you think boxes are cameras?
I'm so confused. We have a camera here. I did it again. We have a box here. And in this box are 12 magical questions. So we put the call out on Facebook and Instagram for people to submit questions they would like to ask actors and theatre practitioners, which we all are. Mm-hmm. So I've put in those slips of paper in the box, and we're going to pull one out, and we're going to talk about it today. And Beck, would you like to do the honours?
Oh, I'm so excited.
I'm nervous.
So you can read what's on there. And also, if it has a name, you can read who submitted it.
For listeners, it is like a little treasure chest.
It is a little
very
chest,
exciting.
Yeah. And there are 12. We're going to do one every month until the box is empty.
Wow.
Great. All right. What do we got?
Okay. Oh, it's from Anonymous.
Okay. Oh my, like the hackers? Oh.
You've been hacked. All your pictures are ours.
Why do theatre companies precast and say they don't, then hold open auditions?
Right.
Okay.
So I think it's like, why do companies say, hey, we're opening auditions up, and then they've actually already precasted?
Yeah.
Do you reckon that's what they're trying to say?
Yeah, well, and
Good question.
I certainly asked this question myself when I was a younger performer, because of course, you try and go for every opportunity that you can, but some are already closed off by the time you're, in the audition process, which can feel extremely unfair.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, I am not from that end of the spectrum, but from my personal experience, and I've never been precast before, but I think that, I don't know, if there's somebody in mind when you're planning to put on a show and you have a vision in your mind of what you want that show to look like, it makes sense to approach that person first.
Yeah.
And I've been part of shows where, and especially the beginning process where you're thinking about doing a show, sometimes that is sparked by a performer that you know. Like I understand Nicholas Thorogood, who just did our production of A Doll's House and Maitland Rep, did that show because of Anna Lambert, who is the lead performer. They have that kind of relationship where it sparked that interest in that show to do that, and so you have to pick a starting point to build from. Sometimes that is a play, sometimes that's an actor that inspires the rest.
Have you been precast before, Amy?
Yes.
What were you precast in?
I'm trying to think now. I have done a couple of music theatre pieces where I've been approached and they've said, or maybe not necessarily precast, but said, you really should audition for this.
I think that's a different thing.
That might be a slightly different thing. There was definitely one show I remember that I was specifically asked to play a role. But,
you've been a director before, Carl, and so you've been on that side of the casting decision where it's like, okay, so I have this play, I have this character, and I know who'd be really good in it. And in some ways it feels a bit of a waste of time and a little bit mean to audition a role if you know you're going to give it to someone.
Well, for instance, my directorial debut, Art, which was in September of last year.
Did you say Fart?
Yeah, Fart. I directed a show called Fart. It's an award-winning Tony original production called Fart.
It was a one-man show, Carl Gregory sitting there farting into a microphone.
It only went for 45 seconds, which is pretty impressive.
Which is pretty good for a fart.
I did that for 2 weeks.
Yeah. To an audience of hundreds.
No, it was Yasmina Rez's Art, and it's 3 performers, all 50s and above, and I didn't hold auditions for that show. I straight up precast it. And then that's because as my directorial debut, I did not have the confidence to leave those performances up to auditions. I may have found some people that were absolutely wonderful and could have done the production just as well. That's not to say. I just didn't have the confidence in myself as a director, and that's nothing to say about the quality of auditions or people out there. I think we could have very easily cast it by holding open auditions, but it was very much, I need to know that for this first project, I have to be able to trust these people, and I pick people that I've worked with and knew and trusted. I can absolutely sympathize and empathize with performers who are locked out of parts that they would love to go for. It does feel incredibly unfair because
I've been there before. It's rough.
And through no fault of your own.
But it also opens up opportunities. So I've auditioned for shows where the role that I specifically would have loved to play had been precast.
Yes.
But then I tried for something else, got that role, and then absolutely loved every second of it. So and wouldn't have changed it at all.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hindsight.
I think those limitations do sometimes breed moments, like particularly with Knock and Run. I auditioned for Year of the Rooster for the role of Gil.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
we want you to play a bin chicken. What was the character's name again? Bat Dolphin.
Yeah, Bat Dolphin. That's right. And I ended up going. You ended up casting me in another role.
It really. I I mean, this is a good opportunity to talk about knock and runs because we don't publicize it. We do have a policy on auditions, which is we don't do closed auditions. We don't do pre-casting. The only instance where pre-casting happens is if the actor or someone presents the play to us and says, "I want you guys should stage this show. I would like to play this role." It seems unfair to me to like not get them to be involved in the project they pitched us. It hasn't happened that often, to be completely honest. Most of the time with knock and run, when it comes to pre-casting, it's me. So it's because I know I'm going to be in the show, so I'm producing it, so it's just easier. But I think that the question is, why did people?
Yeah, I wanted to get back to the question.
Why did people read it out for us?
Why do theatre companies precast and then say they don't?
Yeah.
Then hold open auditions.
And I think that is an issue.
We can all agree that that's not the right way to go about things.
No, just be transparent with what you're doing. If you are holding auditions for some roles and not others. I don't think you need to say, we are auditioning these roles, the rest are precast. You can just say, we're auditioning these roles.
Yeah.
And people can read into that, be like, okay, what about the other ones? I guess they were already cast.
For instance, Newcastle Theatre Company recently did Present Laughter, and they had precast the role of Gary Essendon.
Yeah.
Now, from the very start of those auditions, they said, this part is absolutely cast.
Yeah.
So from here, you can go for the rest of these parts.
Yeah.
That's the right way to do it.
I agree.
Be clear and communicative about who you have already been involved. And then go from there. But we can all agree that this kind of
that's not good. Yeah,
it's not. It's informal precasting and then pretending like, oh no, you can go for any role. It feels an absolute waste of time.
I think both Beck and you, Carl, all three of you, I've in the past been like, hey, you should audition for this role, and the reason I've said that to you is because I can see you in the role. So, but it's usually not. You're the only person I can see in the role.
No.
Like for Suicide Inc., Carl, we used to live together at the time when I read that play, and I was like, oh man, I can picture you as Norm, but I still made you audition because I'm very open to the possibility that someone's going to come in and be way better than you.
Yeah.
And
I think there's a danger to being precast.
I think so too.
And I can speak from a privileged position because unfortunately I'm part of a demographic that is underrepresented in Newcastle, which means that I get offers more to play parts. And
what demographic are you talking about?
The 25 to 35-year-old guy.
I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
There's an abundance of roles for that, and there's six actors.
Yeah, and there's
I get the same thing.
You see the same faces, and that can feel very annoying. And it's not based on it's not based on my own skill. It's based on I look like this and I'm this old.
Yeah,
do you know what I mean?
100%. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's. I want to go back to what you said about Norm, because sometimes being precast is a bad thing, because auditioning actually, if you earn a part, I think
you want
personally,
it more,
and it makes you think about the part in a different way. If you're precast, you can kind of just coast in and go well, I've got this, I don't need to worry about this. But if you're actively trying to win a role and you're mining for information and it's changing the way that you perform and that you present that idea, I think it actually does add a lot more.
Yeah.
My advice to all casting directors or theatre company heads is to avoid precasting when you can. Only do it sparingly. A good example is what very popular theatre does, where they have headline actors from overseas. They obviously are just going to not make them audition for their play. They get them and then they rehearse and they come in. Obviously that, but then they audition the rest of the ensemble. And I think that's a really interesting and good way of doing it. The bad way of doing it is you have a play with 5 characters in it and you precast 4 of them and you leave one role available for every actor in Newcastle to sort of audition for. That was happening a lot, sort of pre-2016, I think, early 2010s. I know, I was in that demographic of young male actors. Plenty of male actor roles being written, but still really struggling to find anything to act in because they were always getting precast by ensemble members or company members of those companies. So I think that, and auditions are such a great opportunity to meet people too.
Yeah.
Every single audition that we've done for knock and run shows, there have been people come in who don't get a role, but we remember them and we recommend them coming back in for another one. And sometimes it takes them 2 or 3 times to get cast. But it's something I tell my students is that you should just audition for everything, even if you don't get it, because it's such a valuable thing to go in. I remember an audition for, I think it was The Return that Stooge Theatre did. That was my first audition. I didn't get it, but I met Carl Young. I met Matt Lee, and they actually asked me to come back and audition for something else, which I didn't get. But it was still like, it was nice getting a foot in the door and meeting them and being remembered in auditions. I think that's
puts you on their radar as well.
Of course, yeah.
It? Like, I remember you had a small role in Love Song.
That's right, I did. Yeah. And I think that's where that came from, because I'd auditioned for them 2 or 3 times, and I wasn't right for any of the parts they had, but they still liked me enough to give me a small role in one of their plays as a waiter. Yeah.
Just as an offshoot of that question, how do you feel about casting kind of when there's a preference for people who have worked with that theatre company before? Like there's kind of a loyalty bonus. What is that?
I actually feel speaking personally through Knock and Run, feel the opposite way. I think that when you work too much with one person, they get too tethered to the company it becomes a bit detrimental. I kind of prefer to work with new actors. It depends obviously on who auditions, but for example, The Unseen, which is going to be back on in March after not happening last year, those 3 actors, Matt, Phil and Paul, all in different Knock and Run shows back in. But then we look at 2.0, which will be in April. All 5 of those actors have never been in a show before. And then you look at Trevor, and I think most of those actors also have never been in a Knock and Run show before. So for me, I prefer to sort of diversify. Carl's been in, how many Knock and Run shows have you been in?
3.
3.
Yeah.
So Carl's an awesome actor.
Thank you.
Carl has to work harder now in his auditions for me
Much
to be
harder.
like, because I don't want people to just see Norm or the Chicken Man, or what was the other one?
That was Norm again.
Oh yeah, Norm again. No, what? Oh, Norm again. We did it twice. Yeah,
we did it
totally.
twice.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that's my thinking. What do you guys think?
I want to talk about what Amy said, which is that kind of loyalty bonus that goes into already working with an established company or a company with established relationships. Auditions are a risk-taking behavior. At the very base of it, you are just reaching out and hoping that you find people that can fulfill those parts. So it's I can understand it's an instinct of companies to lean on people that they know can deliver. You know, there's got to be some guarantees to this process. Yeah. That's not to say it's always a good thing. Like you said, you can become very rote, very stale. If you just see the same people playing the same parts or in the same company,
it gets boring.
Yeah. Well, you just the spark of it, it loses its luster.
And that's that's one of the pitfalls of Newcastle theatre is it is a relatively small community, and we do know each other and we do see the same actors over and over again. A benefit of being an actor that hasn't been in anything before is that I have nothing to compare it to. I don't have to be like, oh, she was great, but that's exactly the same as the show I saw in 3 months ago.
I can't tell you how excited I get when it's some new person in a really key
in a big role.
And you just get blown away, and then all of a sudden you become a fan of this person. Yeah. And you're just like, well, when are you going to do something again? They're like, oh, maybe in 2 or 3 years. You're like, no, come back. Come back.
But then they do like 6 in a row. You're like, take a break, buddy. Like, relax.
All right, I get it.
I'm sick of you.
All right. I understand. Not
you. Not you. I would never call you buddy.
Oh, thank you.
I would never.
And that's why I love Knocking Around.
No, casting is a really, obviously such a critical part. And there's nothing to say that you can't do the audition and not cast anyone. You could have a specific role that you're looking for someone for, and you do the auditions, the open auditions, and no one that comes through is good enough.
Yeah.
And then you can go to your friend or someone you've worked with and be like, hey, look, we auditioned it, couldn't find anyone. Do you want to do it? Maybe just say you auditioned, like that kind of thing.
I'll take one last stab at this question because it's a bit of a personal story. I attempted to direct a production back in 2013 called Sloop with Newcastle Theatre Company. You know this, James, because you ended up in the lead role for that.
Tell the story.
It's a whole saga. I'll save it for another podcast. Okay. But in that instance, I auditioned the 2 roles in that show because it's a young man and it's an old man. I held open auditions for that show, but I definitely had precasted in my mind, which is absolutely not the right way to go about things. And it really did. That became a lesson that I learned very hard.
Yeah.
But to answer this question honestly, it's because as a producer or as a director, you are scared that you may not get what you want from the people you have. You want the opportunity to say, hey, this person came in, they absolutely blew me away. So while there's informal precasting, you would have the opportunity to say, well, then there's this other person as well, So it's not hard and fast promising someone. It's saying, I'd like to see you in this role.
Yeah.
And then getting blown away. So why do companies precast and then don't and hold open auditions? They want every opportunity they can to make the best version of the show. That's not the right thing to do at all, but it comes from a place of, in my part, fear that I wouldn't get what I needed.
Yeah.
So I think, brutally honestly, that's why some companies may do that.
A little jump off from that story, and then we'll wrap up.
Yeah.